Welcome to The Well, where we get together and talk about life and death and everything in between. My name is Pastor Carrie, and my favorite Crayola crayon color is orchid.
My name is Jay. My favorite kind of tape is the gray duct tape.
Hi, my name is Pastor Tim, and my favorite cow is a heifer.
Sorry, I don't know why that got me.
What?
Speaking of that, what do you get from a spoiled cow? I'm sorry. I blew the joke.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
okay. Should we try it? Let's see it from the
What
top.
do you get from a pampered cow?
Spoiled milk. Okay.
Every once in a while, the brain just shuts down. And so let's go on before we get in any more trouble.
All right. Well, let's bring out our other team member.
We didn't introduce Mel.
Yeah, well, Mel's coming out right now.
Here he
All right,
comes.
here he is. Yep.
Hi,
Hey,
Mel.
Nice to see you. All right. How are you doing? Pretty good. All right. Mel lives down at the bottom of the well, and he has been collecting topics of conversation that he has overheard for many, many years, just in case anyone ever wanted to come by and have a good conversation. Right, Mel? So he is going to lend us some of these topics. Let's have some good ones today, Mel, right? Okay. Some nice, maybe some short ones, maybe some lighthearted ones. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Oh, he's saying no? Oh.
Of course he said no.
All right. Let's give it a try. Here he goes. Down into the well to get our first topic.
I do have to say, Mel is wearing my favorite shirt of his.
He's still kind of in his summers. Yeah. He, even though we're kind of going towards fall here, he has not given up that one.
No, he's rocking it out.
Yeah, he likes it. Thank you, Mel.
Okay. What might be different about the New Testament if its writers had known that people would be basing their lives on those words 2,000 years later? So I'm going to say this without all the extra breaths I took. What might be different about the New Testament if its writers had known that people would be basing their lives on those words 2,000 years later?
All right. I like this question.
Me too.
Because oftentimes we tend to forget that the New Testament is some Gospels, and there's also an apocalypse story in there, but a lot of the New Testament are made up of letters that one person wrote to another person, one side of a correspondence, which I think is really interesting. It's interesting to remember that that's what it is. Paul was not writing the second letter to the Corinthians to us in the United States in 2022.
Right.
I think that, I don't know, but I would imagine that the writers of those letters would have been, I mean, how would you ever imagine that a letter that you were writing to someone for a very specific purpose would be passed down for thousands of years and serve as advice or directives to people who live in a place, in a context that you would have absolutely no idea how to relate to it all. I feel like probably those letters would not have come out the way they did, in the sense that if you did know that, wouldn't you be afraid to write anything?
Right.
Yeah. So I think that I can't imagine what you would write if you were to sit down and write, okay, here, write a page letter that in 2,000 years people are going to base their lives on. What would you write?
What always gets me about that is, like, I think of like the letter to Galatians or Corinthians. They shared it. I mean, they're basically being raked over the coals. They said, "Wow, this is great. Let's." And then I think about the church today. If we say something that upsets somebody a little bit or steps on their toes, how did those letters make it to us? But would they have changed it? I don't know. What I like to think of when I look back, I like reading some of John Dominic Cresson's books, and when he looks at the historical Jesus and what may actually have happened, or what I like to think of is I can barely in any way comprehend the culture 2,000 years ago. I mean, it is so foreign. And I think that's why, Paul and Peter and John all thought that the world that Christ was returning before they died. Martin Luther thought that Christ was returning because it's easier for us to imagine that
Good point.
than to think. I like to use this argument. God's favorite number is 3.
Hmm.
We're only 2/3 of the way there. Now, imagine what the world will be like in the year 3000. My mind would explode. And so I don't think they would see that as, gee, I'm writing this for Pastor Kerry J and Pastor Tim to discuss for a radio show or a TV show in the year 2022. And I think we have to take that into account when we're reading this, the culture they were written in and all of that. So, yeah, they would be different.
Mhm.
They would, I won't get any arguments, but our view of historical accuracy had no bearing upon them. They did not have that understanding. They were telling a story.
Um, I, my like quick answer to what would it be if it was written for 2,000 years from now is I don't know if anything would have been written because I mean, to your point, Pastor Tim, a lot of cases they didn't know if they're going to make it past their lifetime, if humanity was
Right.
even going to make it, or for whatever
Right.
reason, right?
Sure.
And so, actually, what came to mind, when I was having this discussion in my head while you both talking, I was like, this is such a classic Jay answer. But moving to analogy, of course, is I think of the moments that I've been around when my parents were either helping their parents or whatever it was clean out like great grandma's house or grandpa and grandma's house, and we come across one particular memory comes to mind of a letter that my grandpa had written to my grandma when he was at training at the Air Force Base. Um, and, in that letter, he didn't write that for us to find it after grandma died,
Right.
right? He wrote it to grandma to tell her what he was going through and that he was still committed to her and loved her. And what we saw in that letter was, oh my goodness, like that must have been like a crazy 4 years, but they were so committed. And like when grandma, unfortunately, grandma died from a very rare disease, that like even in his failing health with lifelong diabetes and all that, like he was just as committed. Like that's what we got out of that letter. Not like, how are we going to dissect these words? But like, wow, grandpa was like they were so committed to each other then and now, and like they weren't just words, like they were backed up with actions and how they lived their life. And so I think for me, like, what commitments do we see, or what attributes of God are revealed in from the writers of the letter? Not like what is this specific phrase about, someone wearing a hat and or whatever it is, right? So yeah, like what do we learn about the attributes of who God is based on the people writing these letters, or based on how they're communicating God's love?
Yeah, in some ways, it reminds me how you say that with a letter reminds me. In some ways, you could think of it like a fairy tale, right?
Mm.
Like the specifics of the story, it doesn't really matter, except that it's a story that you're telling, right? It's the truth that comes out, right? So, what truths are you hearing here, right? Like, so you heard the truth of the commitment, right? Like, it wasn't the specifics of I was here and then I was there and all the things that you hear in letters. Like, that's okay. It's
Right.
sort of it's a setting and it sort of helps you to understand it. But the important thing is what truths can we get out of it? Like you said, where is God contained in that? Yeah, interesting.
And your
Yeah.
grandmother definitely read that letter from a different viewpoint than all of you did.
Right.
The people of
Completely.
Galatia read that letter from a different viewpoint than we do.
Right. And like even if we take that analogy a little further, understanding culture, it's like my mom is going to read that differently as the only daughter in the family,
Yes.
and on top of that being being their child, as I would read it, or as my dad would, and married into the
Right.
family, right? They're going to read that very differently, but it's
Yeah.
the same
Yes.
letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Fascinating. All right. No, that's a pretty good start, Mel.
Yeah, that was a good one.
All right, let's
Good, that was
let's
fun.
give it another try. All right, here he goes. All right. Looks like he's got something here. Oops, his hand is tangled up. Nope, he's good. Okay, here we go. All right. Excellent. Oh boy.
Well, it looks like
long
there's a lot of
one,
words
huh?
on that
Okay.
one.
All right. And difficult. Many and difficult words. Okay. Abu Hanifa, perhaps, is how you pronounce that. The great 8th century Muslim intellectual noted a difference of opinion in the community is a token of divine mercy. I'll read that one more time. Difference of opinion in the community is a token of divine mercy. How are differences of opinion usually viewed in faith communities? How do you see them? I think that's an
Okay.
interesting
Yeah.
question to follow our first question.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a Pastor Tim, if you're okay with it, I have a quick first thought. Okay. My first quick thought is I thought of like the difference of opinion. I think one of the main reasons that I love what we get to do on this podcast is, although it might sound like we agree all the time, we have very different angles that come amongst things. And like, after, what people don't see is like when the camera's off and the podcast mics are shut down, like we continue this conversation and like learn through that because of the kind of different angles that we take on these things. And so I think it's really healthy and benefits the faith community, not just leaders doing it, but maybe leaders exampling it, to know the church can do that. And then I would say, how are differences of opinion usually viewed in faith communities? I would say they're seen as either contradictions or something we shut down. And I know I'm generalizing faith communities when I say that, but I think as a whole, it's seen as a, here's the truth, take it or leave it. I think there's something to be said about the wonderful diversity of thought and what we gain from listening, and listening with intent to learn, not always reply or respond. So I guess maybe that's how I answer the third question. How do I see them? Is that that we can, and if anybody knows me even a little bit, it's not a secret. I have a lot of opinions. Right? I mean, I have a lot of opinions, but I think one of the reasons that sometimes I feel comfortable sharing them is because there's people in communities that I'm involved with that are willing to share theirs and willing to listen, and with expectation I'm going to listen to theirs as well. I think that's healthy, and that's where we can grow.
Yeah, okay. Oh, sure. What really strikes me about this question is mercy. What do we think of when we think of divine mercy? Right? And then have you ever thought of a difference of opinion being mercy? What an interesting way to think about that. Right, almost like a holiness or some type of a holy reconciliation is achieved in difference of opinion.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
The thought that came to mind is how I'm going to really show my cards here, but how far does that go, right? Because like, yeah, I kind of show my cards that I agree with this and like where they're going. But to your point, this idea of divine mercy, like how far does that go? Because our opinions also have consequences. And I don't mean consequence in just a negative way. I just mean cause and effect, right? Like our opinions do have consequences. So how far does that go? Like, my opinion is the Bible says this, so this person is excluded.
Right.
Like that, my opinion, right, is that that's not mercy.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
take that over,
No,
but
no,
that's what I was like,
that's-
oh man,
Yeah,
that mercy piece is really the one that trips you up, huh?
it is. It is, and I think it's in some ways because our Christian heritage has brought down this idea of belief. That belief is the way we earn our way into being Christians, right? What makes you a Christian? Because I believe, right? Well, what does that then? How does difference of opinion get into there? Well, what do you believe, right? And when we have such high stakes on belief are so high as to be indicative of God's love and faithfulness toward you, right? You must believe the right things to right, and I'm sorry to say, even Jesus, those words are put in Jesus' mouth as well, right? To those who believe, they're given the power to become children of God, right? And whatever that meant, we sometimes take it as, yeah, because I got to believe the right thing all the time. And then it becomes of course, a work, an earning of God's love by your belief.
I've had this twice in my life, pretty heavy. One just recently in men's ministry, and those who are there will know what I'm talking about. Nobody else needs to know. The other one was in 2009 at the church I was serving when we passed our sexuality social statement, where we allowed churches to do same gender unions. Sometimes when you disagree with somebody, the way you disagree is important too. When you deny the humanity or the acceptance of another, that's not mercy. That's a difference of opinion that you kind of have to stop. Whether we're dealing with people in same gender relationships, whether we're dealing with people of color, or people of different poverty levels. If a church is excluding that, that's not a difference of opinion. That's not mercy.
Right.
The second point is one that I'm in right now. I am a firm believer that my line is that we're saved by grace through faith in Christ Jesus, and that's it. Anything else you can argue about. I don't care about the color of the carpet. I don't care about the color of the walls. I don't care about the liturgy. Do what you want to do as long as it's based on saved by grace through faith in Christ Jesus and God, with God's love. But then
That doesn't go for you, Jay. You have to pay attention to the liturgy, at least for now.
For the next 4 years.
Sorry, I just thought
I was
of that
going to say
instantly.
something. I was like, is that a matter of opinion? 'Cause
but we had an incident where someone lifted up that Jesus is created, thus getting into who God is and what God does, and basically saying that, yeah, he's begotten but not eternally begotten. And there's a reason why we have these creeds the way we have them. Matter of fact, if you'd like to join us, our men's group will be going through the creeds and their historical relationships, but it'll all probably be ending by the time you hear this one. But what we say about who God is important. And
Yeah.
I believe that God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit eternally, from beginning to ending. And there is no beginning, there is no ending. Because that also gets into our salvation, how we're saved. If Christ is just another created being, then we can be just like Jesus. And that's why that's so important, because then that returns salvation back into my court. And I have no dealings with that. So there comes a time where a difference of opinion in those two instances where I would just have to say, no, that's unhealthy. That's not right. But if we want to disagree about this clause in the Constitution or about this or that, go for it. And you'll hear me probably not talk too much while we're going through that disagreement, because I don't care. As long as it's not hot pink. Purple, great. Not hot pink.
I'm hurt.
Jay. Aw.
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. I mean, and maybe in some ways, then God's mercy is also just at work, sort of teaching teaching us about each other and God through those differences, and either accepting, discussing, or rejecting.
And thank you for having mercy so that I could work through how I was going to say that, because we are in the midst of a disagreement on that. And just
Mhm.
thank you for letting me go last.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, no problem.
absolutely. All right. What do you think, Mel? One more? All right, here we go. All right. Again, his arm gets all tangled up.
Mel
Give him a
Mel
second
really went
here.
down for that one.
Okay, now we're good.
Oh, I'm nervous.
There we are. Thank you, Mel.
Thanks, Mel.
If I walk twice as slow, oh, this is not for me.
Difference of opinion.
If I walk twice as slow, I see twice as much. Tara Branch, discuss the practice of slowing down. Have you tried this? What difference might such a practice make? I'm not interrupting. I'm just saying my wife and I are having a big discussion right now about how fast I drive. Thank you for this, Mel.
Yeah, good one, Mel. I okay. For those of you watching the video, you just saw a very intentional eye contact between Pastor Carey and I. So Pastor Carey and Pastor Tim, but Pastor Carey is somebody that's very intentional about reminding me to slow down and know that no is actually a word. Yeah. And so,
No, it's actually a word.
and so I'm laughing because I am probably the last one in this zip code or beyond that should be answering this question in my current state. But I was. So if I look at overall life, I'm in a stage of life where I'm pretty much just going all out right now. But I think of the moments. So I enjoy like running and hiking and biking. And I think of those things that I have the privilege really of living close to the Military Ridge Trail, and it's very interesting that if I'm biking or running or walking on the trail, I see different things, even if it's the same portion of trail I've been on multiple times. There are various things that I see or perceive differently. And so I think the perspective gained in being able to slow down, we're humans, we're not robots, right? I know I'm saying that probably in a slightly hypocritical way right now, that I'm thankful for Pastor Dan, Pastor Gary, and others in my life that help me process that in the current speed of my life. But I will say, even with that being the context, I know the importance of it and the need for it, because we're not robots. We are human beings that need different paces and spaces to live and grow and learn, gain perspective of things. I laughed originally, or before the eye contact between us. I laughed originally. On our mission trips, we have a leader. Now, I'll ask forgiveness later, Cope, for naming you out loud. But we have one of our adult leaders. His name is Cope, and him and I have this back and forth that we pretty much always do now. Is I typically am up front leading the group, and he is in the back making sure that, like, when you get large numbers, that no one is left behind. And almost every time we get to the location, he'll look me in the eyes and say, "Well, I didn't know we were sprinting there," and and he always winks and laughs. But it's one of those things. Like, even that reminder of, like, we don't have to be in a hurry all the time, right? Like, even my walking is pretty paced. And so, yeah, even just those little reminders of, like, yeah, it was a joke, but, like, it's a good reminder just in life in general. Like, okay, where's the moment where I'm going to take that breath or slow down and encourage others to do that with me or for themselves, however that looks. So.
I think my most profound experience with intentionally slowing down is when I did a month of labyrinth practice. So I did a labyrinth every day. I am someone who is motivated by getting things done, checking things off a list, going the shortest distance between 2 points. If I'm about to go in the bedroom and get something, I'll plan like, now what can I get done on the way? And then what can I get done on the way back? Right? Like, because so that
I think I just figured out why I walk so
That-
fast, because I can't think like that. So it just takes 6 trips. Sorry.
I do the same, which is horrifying.
it is. It is. And what that is like and what that ends up becoming for me is an idol. Is always looking to see what I can do faster, what I can do better, what I can do more efficiently, and how I can get done what I need to get done the best in the shortest amount of time. And so what the labyrinth taught me, because you wind your way in and you wind your way out of a labyrinth, and there are many times, if not most times, that your feet are not pointed at your destination. Your feet are either pointed completely opposite, or to one side or to the other side. You're not even looking at your destination. You are just taking the footsteps one at a time. And I found it to be surprisingly difficult, because I wanted to just get to the middle and then do my thing and get back out. This was for a class that I did this. So it wasn't like I was sort of required to do this. And at first I found it to be just excruciating to have to take all this time to get to the middle and all this time to get to the way back. But the thing about a labyrinth is oftentimes you may picture the trip in as the trip to your availability to the divine, the center, your time with the divine, and then your trip back, bringing that divine presence with you out into the world. And it was absolutely incredible to me how when I would finally then get to that middle, how ready I was to meet God there. I wasn't ready before. My feet had to do a certain number of things before I could get quiet and get ready and be available for that still small voice. I can't just sit down at my kitchen table, for me personally, and hear that still small voice. I need to practice around it. And what that is in a labyrinth practice is a deliberate slowdown and a withholding of goals from yourself. I did not allow myself to be efficient in that moment. I said no to myself when it came to getting things done. And I think it's a very powerful discipline.
Was that your headphones?
Wow.
Would you I found that really profound. Would you say that almost that you got to let go of seeing yourself as an achiever and seeing yourself
Yes.
as just to be who you are
Exactly.
at its fullest, maybe?
That's exactly right. And I think that's in some ways how it's a metaphor, but also a practice of not constantly trying to earn your way to your value and your salvation, which is just it's a constant temptation for me. It's a constant idol for me, which constantly needs to be let go. I need to open my hand, which is clenched around it all the time. Constantly remember, open your hand, open your hand.
So what we do about who we are.
I am always in a hurry. Matter of fact, one of my greatest days of my life was when the Beltline opened the flex lane and I got to drive on it.
I think of you every time I see that flex lane because of that.
For those he came back. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pastor Gary. He came back to the office like bouncing.
He was like walking on air.
Yeah.
It was like the best day ever.
He's
Like, was
so
it when your
excited.
children were born? That was okay. But did I tell you about the flex lane?
I am always in a hurry. And when I read this, for those of you who are old enough, my mind went right to the 59th Street Bridge song, Feeling Groovy. Look it up. Slow down, you're going too fast. Got to make the morning last now. That's kind of something I need to do. And like when Pastor Carey mentioned the labyrinth, I talked about maybe we could put a labyrinth in the new carpeting that we put in Friendship Hall and build a labyrinth in there. As I'm speaking it, my mind's going, no, stop. And I'm just going to share, I know we're running late, but I'm going to just share one story. When Allie was about 3, we were in Cedar Rapids, and we were walking to the school where the park is, where she could go on the swing. So I'm in a hurry to get to the park. And Allie is stopping at every anthill and every little clover and every dandelion. And I'm getting all so impatient. And then I all suddenly realize she's having a joy watching these ants, looking at this white clover, blowing on a dandelion, talking to a dog that she's never met before. She's experiencing creation where I'm like saying, "Park, let's go." And that one of my biggest weaknesses is I gotta slow down. And so, yeah, I've missed a lot in my life because I was too worried about when the exit was coming and not what was happening in front of me.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I think there could be a whole podcast like series or just a whole podcast
Yes,
on it about this topic.
definitely. All right. But let's go ahead and move on. It is, I cooked our recipe today. This is from the St. Luke's ALCW. So that's American Lutheran Church of Wisconsin cookbook from 1976. And this recipe is, when I read it, I had to make it ice cream muffins by Diane Schumann.
Ice cream muffins.
And I thought, ice cream muffins, that's insane. Truly, there's ice cream in them.
you would think they'd be soggier.
They said, you can use whatever kind of ice cream you like. So whoever can guess what flavor of ice cream did I use?
Not mint chocolate chip.
And it did not. They're dry. They cooked way faster than the recipe said.
Pistachio?
Pistachio.
Pistachio ice cream?
Yep.
I was so focused on figuring that out.
I wish it tasted more like pistachio.
Mhm.
And in retrospect, I feel like I would put a little almond extract in to just punch up that sort of nut flavor. Yeah. They're weird and dry. That's I give them like a 1.
Definitely not soggy.
No, these are not soggy muffins.
The opposite of a soggy muffin.
Give it
That's a
another
wrap.
try. I'm
That's
gonna
a wrap.
try to just take the middle part without the crust.
There's a lot of baking powder in them, so they really are kind of like biscuits, except for the ice cream.
So is the ice cream basically instead of like milk or whatever?
I guess, but like biscuits don't have milk. I mean,
Well, right. Yeah.
it has
sorry.
oil. No, not at all. It has
My mind
oil.
keeps thinking muffin, but really it's a biscuit.
You know, if you
I
took
like
a
a
little
biscuit.
beef stew and poured it on this, it would be good.
Maybe it does kind of taste like a biscuit, right?
I'm
I'll
gonna
probably
be-
go like 1.5.
I think I'm in one territory. I'm sorry.
Mm-mm.
Y'all are so polarized on your rating scale. It's either like top tier
We cannot.
or like it's garbage. Get it out of here.
Seriously though, if we go back to all our episodes, we really are that way.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
well,
great.
see,
and
I basically
terrible.
have something where, I would eat this again, or
I would
don't
never
ever
eat
bring
that
this to
again.
me again.
I think here's the thing though, is I actually think I would eat this again.
They were better when they came right out of the oven when they were warm, and I did make these last night. Now they were in Tupperware, but
Thank you for the butter. It definitely adds.
right, definitely needed the butter.
I'm gonna go 2.5, 2.70, 2.75.
Just
Pretty-
above middle.
Nice,
Did I say 1.5?
you did.
I'm gonna go 2 because I
That's
keep
a-
eating it. At least 2. Also, if you put a little more butter and like put it like in a hot pan for a second.
It would be better if you warmed them up a little bit in the microwave, I think, because they were better when they were
I
hot.
want my food the way it should be when I eat it. I don't want to have to take extra steps. It's still a 1 to me.
Can I ask what kind of ice
cream?
what brand?
Brand Haagen-Dazs.
Haagen-Dazs.
Yeah, it was the only one that I found that was pistachio. I played with a couple other flavors standing in front of the freezer doors, but then when I saw pistachio, I was like, "Yep, that's it." Right? Like strawberry seemed weird, like chocolate, no, vanilla, I guess, right? But and then I saw and stuff with chunks in it, like no. Even though I know this has pistachio nuts in it, but like Reese's peanut butter cup, no, none of that's gonna work.
I think the pistachio helped it from being a 0.5. Okay.
So extreme.
If you
I
look,
know,
if you look at past episodes of The Well, and you look at my plate, how often have you seen me leave a plate like this? It just doesn't happen.
rough.
The first one, the new sandwich.
Yeah.
He did not take that down too fast.
No, that's right.
Oh man. A God moment.
I actually have one. Just yesterday, I somehow found myself back at old videos, and I had a video of my dog Cooper, and my now used to be my mom's dog Bilbo, but now it's my dog. When Bilbo was a puppy, and Cooper was a little over a year, playing together, and the interaction of my parents to the two dogs and how both of their personalities came out. Like my dad right away, he's going to get hurt, because that's my dad went that route all the time. Just had me flashing back to almost like I was right there with both my parents. And I found myself laughing and crying at the same time with the memory, because it was one of those moments where there wasn't any guard up or anything. They were both showing their personalities. And my mom really got into the dogs wrestling and playing and would egg them on. And it was just a wonderful thing. So then I forwarded it to Betty, these videos that I found. And yeah, it was just a wonderful time to connect. So that was really cool.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you for journeying to the well with us. God's peace be with you.
The Well is a podcast of St. Luke's ELCA in Middleton, Wisconsin. You can follow for new episodes airing every other Thursday on St. Luke's website or wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to drop a question in The Well, you can dive over to stlukes-elca.org/thewell to submit your questions there. The Well is sponsored by St. Luke's Foundation. The foundation is dedicated to leaving a legacy for future generations. You can learn more at stlukes-elca.org/foundation. Thanks for listening, and we'll meet you next time here at The Well.